Hey there, everybody. How are you? This is Stuart Knight, host of You Gotta Meet, and I want to welcome you to yet another incredible show with another incredible guest. And this time, I am very lucky to be joined by an individual who I will tell you how I met in a second. His name is Gregg, but he has a hell of a bio. One of those ones where when you meet him, you think, if you got a podcast, you need this guy in your show. He's the author of multiple books, one being called Are Dolphins Really Smart? I mean, if that doesn't grab you, I don't know what will. And just to keep going in that theme, If Nietzsche Were a Narwhal, love that, and a book called Humanish. He is a heck of an individual, and he's got quite a background. Specifically, like I said, he's a best-selling author, he's a scientist, he's a performer, and he helps audiences rethink intelligence, empathy, and creativity on stage, on the page, and in everyday life. Gregg, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Stuart. That was well read. I should have you do all the voiceovers for my intros.
You can hire me. I'm looking for work these days, so I'll take it. So for those of you who are listening or watching, depending on where you're seeing this from right now, this is just an interesting way the world works. It depends on how you look at things. Sometimes you believe it's the universal energy that is, bringing people together. But I was lucky enough to recently be sitting next to Justin on a plane. And ironically, I didn't tell you this, Justin. I was in one of those moods where it's like I did not want to speak to anybody.
Oh,
and
no.
Well, it was one of those like I'm just so tired and I got to get home. And this has been a really long 48 hours because I was speaking at a conference and you were heading to South by Southwest to speak at a conference there yourself. And but within about 5 minutes of small talk and then moving into meaningful talk, I thought, oh, okay, you know what? I'm tired, but this is the kind of dude I want to speak to because you're a very interesting guy. You've done all kinds of interesting things. So, and it didn't occur to me in the moment to have you on the podcast. And I got home and I was thinking about our conversation. I was like, this guy should be on the podcast. So welcome. I mean, you've got this crazy convoluted background, science, your interaction with animals, your belief that animals have so much to teach us, which I want to get into. You're a speaker, but then on the side, like you're doing these like improv classes. You told me about how you even do it with, I believe, refugees that have come to Canada. Yeah. You teach part-time at a university. Like you are really all over the place. I think, didn't you just win like the world's biggest, weightlifting competition last week? I mean, what do you not do?
I do weightlifting these days. It's one of these things you could do as a middle-aged dude to like keep up your, so your bones don't break as you get older.
Right.
I do that. And a bunch of music stuff. It's all mostly, I guess it's just pathological hobbies. Like I keep doing stuff because I like to do interesting stuff.
Right.
Some of them actually pay me money to eat, which is nice too.
Sure.
But it's both a blessing and a curse in that I have so many friends who like when they were 18, they're like, well, I want to be a doctor, and they just studied to be a doctor, and then they're a doctor, and their lives seem very fulfilled. Like they're like,
right.
Well, I did what I set out to do, and I'm happy. Whereas I've always been like, every 3 months, I'm like, I got to do something new. This isn't working. And so it makes me at this age, after half a century of doing it, have an interesting resume.
Right.
But during the process, I'm just all over the map. And it's not always fulfilling, but it
so
looks cool on paper.
What was it then, like in maybe your own upbringing, that gave you the freedom to not go down that traditional path? Because so many of us do grow up in those environments where it's like, pick a lane and go with it.
I think it's just baked into my personality. I can't say that there's a moment when I was like, oh, I'm now going to be like a rebel and not follow the path.
Right.
It was at the time in the late 80s, early 90s when you're supposed to try to go to university, and so like my parents made me go to university because they're like, you got to do something.
Right.
But like I was mostly just rebelling against everything for no good reason. Like I grew up in a completely nice household. My parents were fantastic. I had nothing to rebel against, but
right.
I just didn't like to be told what to do, and so that's still a problem. I just like to do my own thing, and so. That's how I ended up being whatever I am, just whatever that personality trait. It's just in me from the beginning.
Were there ever moments though? I mean, like as I remember, for example, when I first wrote my very first book, obviously there's always that imposter syndrome feeling of like, who the hell am I to be writing a book. First of all, no one's going to read it. Secondly, if someone wants to read something on this subject, they should probably read it from somebody else. That's right. When you started all these things, whether I know you also like are part of a punk band. I think you said to me on the plane, and being the author and then the university professor, all these areas where one could take the attitude of like, who am I to show up here? Yeah. Did you find that was always like a recurring thread, or did it become easier as you did a bunch of things that you had no right doing? Did it become easier to do things that were new for you after that?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter. Like it's the imposter syndrome thing is stuck. It was a big issue in my 20s and 30s, right? Like, who am I? But as you get older, things tend to change. And I have to say, getting a doctorate made me feel like there's a piece of paper saying like, oh, actually, it's not just a bluff. You can do this. You know what you're doing. And that gave me a kind of confidence. And then I hit age 40 and something sort of changed where I was just like, I don't have time for imposter syndrome anymore because I have things I want to do. I'm not qualified to do them. I shouldn't be doing them. And I'm going to do them anyway because I want to, because I'm simply running out of time. And that has been so useful, right? Because like that's when I took these big swings. I'm like, I'm going to try and get like this fancy literary agent in New York, which I have no business doing. I have no business as an author, and yet it worked. And then I got a book deal and blah, blah, blah. So everything is a combination of I don't deserve this, which is how I feel. At the same time, I'm like, yeah, of course, everyone deserves it if you go for it.
I always remember I had a girlfriend a million years ago who opened up this nail salon in Toronto, and she was 24 years old at the time. So first of all, she's already like, punching way above her weight class. And, normally that should be something we're supposed to wait for so much longer to have so much more experience. So she starts it. And one day she's like, I'm going to call the Toronto Star and I'm going to tell them to do an article on my store. And I said, and I was like, I was a few years older than her. I was like 6 years older than her. And I was like this, mature 30-year-old man. I'm like, oh, honey, you don't do that. You can't just call a national newspaper. Well, she proved me wrong. She just called them. And they came down, and they like next 2 weeks later, she's like featured in the major, section within the business magazine. And I thought, okay, that's a life lesson for me to walk away with here, which is like, to me, it comes down to this idea of, I've now realized that it's almost like, who cares? So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to write a book, and I don't necessarily know whether or not I have the right to be doing this or everyone's going to read it, but who cares? Yeah. Just do it. I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago. He was telling me he was suffering from the imposter syndrome because he started a digital marketing company. And he said he was asked to come to this panel and to be one of the speakers, and with him on the panel were all the people that he looked up to and thought they were just way in some other stratosphere. And I just said to him, I go, I'm come to the point where I don't think it ever goes away. You're always going to feel like you're not supposed to be at the table. So if you think that you're going to do something to make it go away, you should just probably stop that now.
That's right. I think you just learn to live with it. You accept that it's always trickling in the background, but it shouldn't stop you. That's the problem is like you're saying, like it's as if you're operating with this idea that there's an external judge telling you, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You're not qualified. But who is this judge? There is no judge. Like the people who succeed are the people who've learned to ignore that. And they're not judging you except if you don't try. They would judge you for not doing things.
That's right.
So the answer is always just try it. Like most things I try fail. And I don't think they're delusional because I did have a shot. It just didn't work out. Yeah. And learning to fail and have your idea not work out and being immune to that sort of pain is something that you can build up. Like if you do that over and over and over again, it no longer bothers you. So it's worth failing a lot in order to succeed.
I talked to this guy one time, John is his name, and he was probably at that time the most successful entrepreneur that I'd ever met. Had built multiple companies and was doing international work. And I asked him kind of like, what would you say are the most common traits that you've seen out of the people that you interact with? And he was about, at this time, 20 years older than I am. And probably still is if he's still alive. And I think that's how it works.
That's how time works, yeah.
It's crazy, this math. And he said that one of the things that was most common in the successful entrepreneurs that he knew was that all of them had gone bankrupt at least once.
Yeah.
And I thought, I was so not ready for that answer. I thought perseverance or intelligence or just a good idea. It's like, oh, I see. So they all just failed really well. And that's the reason why they know how to do well now.
Yeah, and I teach that when I'm teaching improv as well, because that's one of the things you can internalize that make you a better business person. And I forget her name, but the woman who's the CEO of Spanx.
Oh yeah,
Do you know? Yeah, and
I know.
she's
Yeah, yep.
very famous, very rich, great job. And but she tried things that failed throughout her entire life,
Right.
and got bankrupt. And like she tried to get past the bar exam, it didn't, or to get into law school, it didn't work out. And she was telling the story of how when she was a kid, her father used to ask after school every day, like, "What did you fail at today?"
Yeah.
The
Oh,
idea,
nice.
the idea being like, kids, you should go out there, try some stuff, and have it not work, and then come back and tell me about it.
Right.
So she started, I think, at a young age, getting ready to fail at stuff until
Right.
when it hit big. But she wouldn't have hit if she hadn't failed the other things.
Exactly. That you just reminded me of a time when I remember I got my very first review of a major publication,
Yeah.
and at that time for a musical that I'd written, and I was producing it, and I had my own little theater downtown Toronto, and so I was so excited because the reviewer, who we've been trying to get this reviewer to come to our show for about 2 years, he finally shows up. Everything went perfect. Like, just couldn't complain about a thing. And all the singers were hitting their notes perfectly. Everything was just great. So the end of the show comes, huge, authentic, standing ovation. Everyone went crazy. Yeah, okay. A week later, I go and grab the newspaper. I know this is going to be fantastic. How can it not be? I sit down on the bench in the park. I open it up. There's the first thing I remember seeing was this huge picture of me. And of course, you could probably guess where this is going. You read line after line about how bad the show was, how horrible Stuart was, how paying tickets for this show was a waste of a person's money and time.
Yeah.
He even went down to like saying how uncomfortable the seats were. Like, this guy hated everything in the show. So I sat there on this bench for a little while, and I really felt like quite devastated. I thought, this is maybe I shouldn't be in this game. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And so I sat there for about 20 minutes, really kind of distraught about this. And then all of a sudden I started chuckling, and I thought to myself, hold on, I'm now, with my very first bad review, more like the people I'm trying to be like than I was before. Like, I mean, that time, these famous comedians who I was trying to emulate myself after, like the Steve Martins and the Martin Shorts and the Jim Carreys, I'm like, all of them have bad reviews.
Oh, yeah.
So now I'm more like them. And then I thought, I'm actually now in the game.
That's positive. I like it. I had to deal with bad reviews of books, right? And so it's the same thing. You read a bad review and you're just, it can be pretty devastating. And these days, I'm not devastated at all. I don't even care. I don't even necessarily read them because I'm going to do what I'm going to do no matter what. But at some point during the bad review early stages, when I was still like affected by them, I came up with this idea of, look, half the world is filled with people I don't like. People who aren't very nice,
Right.
like terrible racists, or people I'm just like, they're bad people. I don't like them. And so if 100% of the reviews of my book are positive, that means half of the world who I don't liked my book. They shouldn't like it because I'm not like them and I don't want them to like it. So I expect half of my reviews to be bad because otherwise, if I appeal to everybody, that means I'm appealing to the people I don't like. And I don't want that.
That's a great reframe. I love that. I've never heard that before. I really like that. Have you been able to, because I know you said to me on the plane that you've got a daughter who I believe is a teenager. She's like around 16, 17 maybe?
17, yeah.
17. And have you been able to take these life lessons and impart them to her? Or is she just still too cool for school and like, Dad, you know what, I'll learn it by myself?
The amount of influence, you probably know, as a parent is probably minimal to zero. It feels like, at the same time, like you are modeling behavior that they internalize that it will come out later in their life that you don't realize. Anything I state to her, I feel like is on deaf ears at this point.
Right.
Although I do feel like my wife and I were very clear from the beginning. We had this one rule, which is nobody's opinion matters but your own. So don't live your life because you want other people to think well of you or whatever. Just do your own thing. And she's a very, eclectic, odd person living her own life. And I think maybe that message did come across because we reiterated it so much. But other than that, I think her personality is her personality. Just like I am the way I am, and my parents tried to make me a certain way, and I don't think it worked. And so here we are.
I went through this with my own daughter yesterday, and she was sitting with me and my partner at a cafe, and she saw a friend of hers from her class, this boy, and she went running up to him in and to say hello, and his response was like, "You don't need to talk to me, you know." And she was felt quite deflated, and she came back not with tears in her eyes, but pretty close. And I had to have the conversation with her. I said, you have to understand that this individual, if he chooses to not change and to go through life like that, he is going to have essentially a lot of really horrible moments that come his way. If that's the way he treats people, you cannot own his energy. You can't own his perspective. And so if she takes anything from life and ignores everything else I say, it's just like the way you just said it, right? Basically, the only opinion that matters is your own.
Yeah. And it's powerful and it's hard to internalize, but it's also part of this idea that everybody's main focus is themselves. And so that boy would have said the same thing to anyone that ran up to him in that moment. It wasn't about her, your daughter. Right. And so because people aren't thinking about you in the way that you're thinking about you. And so that's another life lesson as well, I feel like, is everyone lives in their own little world, and it's sometimes not a very pleasant world, and you can't really affect it. You're not really part of it.
Back to those people you were talking about who perhaps aren't operating on the highest level of consciousness. When you think about some of the things that you've learned in the books that you've written, and I want to bring it now into especially the work that you've done with your research with animals and dolphins specifically, but it could be anywhere you want to go with this. What's the first thing that comes to mind that you would want people who are operating on a kind of a lower vibration to understand about animals that would perhaps help them raise their consciousness?
I think we all sort of have an idea about what animals are as kids and as adults that has come from some tradition around us, right? Like a cultural tradition or religious traditions. There's some explanation that has created our relationship to animals. So whether or not we think that they have value or that they are intelligent or they're conscious or that are, we should treat them well or not, that comes almost externally. And so if you realize that and then you say, oh, okay, well, let's figure out what animals are really all about and how I should feel about them. And then you start looking at the science of how animals think. You will find that you can change your opinion about what an animal is and what it means to you and what your moral obligation is toward it. So I think I think the first idea is to realize that we're all, because of our situation in life, have a relationship with animals, and it's worth investigating where that comes from and how it might be wrong.
Interesting. Okay. And when you say wrong, and you talk about, well, let's start with, we all have a relationship with animals. Do you mean that we've all, like, we are around animals, or the fact that the majority of the world's population eats animals, or most people have pets? Like, what do you mean by that?
It's all of those things. So, like, the food thing is an interesting one. I love it because people eat animals all over the planet. It's fairly common. There are some vegan or vegetarian cultures, but for the most part, people are eating animals. And which animals it's okay or not okay to eat is a fascinating issue, because every culture and certainly every religion has rules as to what it's okay to eat and when and why. And when you look at it globally, you realize that that's all totally random. Like in North America, except for like indigenous cultures, which would eat like a whale. For the most part, we don't eat whale and dolphin, right? But why? Why is that? I mean, that's only true for like 200 or 300 years. Maybe before that we would have. And that's just a sort of cultural tradition, which isn't the same in other parts of the world. Right. And understanding, again, it's like I was saying, like the impact of culture and tradition for how we treat animals makes you think about it differently. So if you really examine, like, well, why is it okay to, eat a pig but not a cat? Right. And then you really get into the details of it, it becomes really weird.
It does, doesn't it? Right. I mean, even if you think about how certain religions over the years have thought, well, these are the animals you must sacrifice in order to, be in the good books with your particular god. Sure. Well, why that animal?
Why is this one clean and that one's not clean? Why sacrifice? Yeah, exactly. And right. That's fascinating. So that's what I mean with the relationship. It's there, but why?
Got it. And has it caused you then, I mean, you must get asked this all the time, but I have to know, has it caused you then, based on your research and being able to get into, I guess, we'll call it the intellect of animals and the consciousness of animals, if you will, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or right on that, can you eat an animal?
I do eat meat sometimes. I've cycled back and forth with this problem forever about becoming vegan and vegetarian and cycling in and out of it.
Right.
And it's this problem again of the culture that I'm in, right? And so it's easier in the West these days to be vegetarian or vegan than it ever has been. But when everyone around you is eating meat, it's Thanksgiving or whatever, it becomes harder because of the cultural part. So I've always been battling this pull of culture and tradition, and then what I know about animals and my ethical stance as to whether or not we should be eating them. So it's a constant battle, and we all face this battle.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's interesting if you think about it. I don't know why. I just started thinking about that movie Alive, where humans start eating humans because it gets to the point of just such hunger that you still have a choice. Ethically, you have a choice, but if you don't eat the other humans, you will die.
Yeah.
And so that's a fascinating conversation because, what is right? Should you die? Mm-hmm. And not touch this body, and then of course now we start moving into this concept of does the body have a soul? Yeah. If it has a soul and the soul then leaves the body, then all it is just a piece of meat. Anyways, the consciousness of that person has gone. And if that's true for humans, if you believe that, then I would imagine you'd believe the same thing for a cow or for a pig or for a lamb. But I do. Find myself, wondering about that too, thinking about, because I am a meat eater, but what rules should I have for myself based on I guess what you're talking about is just the idea of just pausing for 5 seconds in your life and just not just doing things because that's what everyone does, but asking yourself how you feel about it.
Yeah, it's true. And the only reason to bother pausing, I think, is because it's clear that when you're eating an animal or another human that has died, harm has been done, right? The animal has to have been killed, assuming you didn't kill this person in order to eat them. And so when harm is being done, then you have to ask yourself, am I justified in being complicit in the harm?
Right.
So it applies in a sense to carrots, right? Because you're harming a carrot. Right. But nobody really is talking about not eating carrots. Well, what is the difference? And then you start to get into this concept of suffering and what is harm. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we all should at least take a moment to justify to ourselves why we do what we do when it comes to food consumption and animal use based on the problem of harm existing.
Yes. I think that seems to be a fair starting point, mainly because if an animal falls over in the middle of a field and dies of natural causes, if the meat is still edible at that point, that's a very different thing than, having an animal that has only lived to, let's say the age of 2 and it's got 8 years left on planet Earth and we just cut it off because the meat is fresher at that point. That is a very different conversation.
It is a different conversation, but it's not always cut and dry as to what is when is it okay or not okay to eat meat. So some meat eaters would say you should never consume the flesh of an animal, even if it died, and they have an argument for it, died of natural causes, right? And so it's not always straightforward to figure out what the problem is that we're trying to solve in terms of what it's okay to eat or not. And I love these conversations, because I teach a course on animal cognition, so just how animals think.
Right.
But wrapped up into it are these philosophical and ethical discussions about how we should treat animals and whether or not it's okay to eat the cow that fell over versus the cow that you killed when it was younger, kind of thing. And it's neat because a lot of scientists, biologists or people studying zoology or whatever, they don't really think about the moral, philosophical, ethical side often, although it's right there for the taking, because as soon as you're talking about intelligence and suffering, you can have these conversations. So I love talking about it with people who haven't spent time thinking about it. And not to say that I have the answers or I'm advocating one way of eating or not eating animals, because I don't know what's right. It depends on so many things. But I love at least having a conversation to figure out why we do what we do.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads me to almost a bigger topic on some level, in the sense that one of the things that concerns me about humanity is that we walk through life and we just take on all of the rules that are, prescribed to us without pausing, without thinking about it. Like, is this the way we should live? I mean, one of the things I often wonder is if ever there will be a point in time call it 1,000, 10,000, 20,000 years from now, when people will look back at us and go, can you believe that they used to go to a job? They were, right? They're on this planet. They could have done anything, and then they would spend it, and then the majority of them spent it doing things that they didn't even enjoy doing. How do they miss that? And just like that.
Yeah. I feel like if you just look at, the 10,000 years that have come before us, and we look back at how humans used to live, you're like, why would they do that?
Right.
I can't believe they behave that way toward each other. And even between cultures at the moment, we're already confused as to why some people do things, right? And so certainly 10,000 years in the future. But I mean, whether or not, the arc of humanity bends toward justice or whatever, I feel like in general, we find ourselves collectively over the past many thousands of years becoming less violent, coming up with systems that are more tolerant. Not, you're cycling through things at all times, but I feel like most of the look at the past is about how cruel and violent we've been toward each other. And in the future, we're going to be maybe less so. I hope that that's the case. So maybe 10,000 years we'll look back and be like, I can't believe that they went to war. War was a thing, like in the Star Trek universe, where they've eliminated war and poverty. That would be nice.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I get frustrated when I speak to people, and of course you see it on social media all the time, where so many people are so damn upset with where humanity is without acknowledging how far we've come. Just like, it's just like, we're dropping a bomb over here. Okay, yeah, let's take a look at that. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Or, there's this corruption in pharmaceutical, there's corruption in the food chain, and there's greed within, the 1%. And it's like, okay, but you do realize that there hasn't been a cholera outbreak in the last couple of months. There are things to be excited about, and never before have we, gotten along with each other, even though it feels like we're more divided today than we ever have been in the history of time.
Yeah, that's right. And so that it's good to sit back and do realize that, because that is true. We are living longer. We are fighting fewer wars. Fewer people are dying from a major disease outbreak. And that's phenomenal. But like, you have this phenomenon, like, and maybe you feel this as well. Everybody at every moment in time always feels like they're living through some terrible event that like, well, this is it, because everything I've known up until now is now destroyed, and we've got this unknown future. It feels like that right now with the way the world is, right? Mm-hmm. And this is unprecedentedly terrible. But I feel like every generation has had that thought at some point, like, things have never been worse. The world is going to hell in a handbasket throughout all of human history, right?
Sure. And so it makes you wonder, are we some sort of, from an evolutionary perspective, pre-programmed to like look for the worst in everything? And maybe there's a survival component to that, which is like, I need to at least address all the possible bad scenarios here so that I can at least be in control should they arise. Maybe that's it.
I mean, I read about that quite a bit in my books as well. Like, one of the things that makes us different from animals is that we can think about not just like the near future, because an animal can plan for a little bit ahead, but like we can think about next year, 20 years from now. We can think about a future after we have died, and we can plan for all these contingencies. And there's no other animal that is doing that. And so we've got a brain, much like every other primate brain, which is suddenly trying to plan for 500 years from now. And we're ill-equipped to deal with the emotional side of thinking like that, even though intellectually we can handle it. So there's this constant battle between our emotions are equipped to deal with the here and now, but our thoughts can worry about the future. And those two things don't meet in a way that is healthy a lot of the time. So it's a weird human problem.
So give me an example of how our ability to think into the future doesn't serve us.
Doesn't serve us. Well, I mean, of course, we're all thinking about our own death a lot of the time. We're one of the few creatures that understands that our death is inevitable and it will come for us no matter what. And some animals do understand concepts of death, but not necessarily that they themselves will definitely die and their death is inevitable. So that isn't a lot of fun for most people, although it does produce, religion and art and whatnot. So I guess it has its knock-on effects, but that's deeply unpleasant.
That's a perfect example. And you could even just say the idea of being focused or obsessed about any potential future negative outcome, which is like, oh, I may never get married, I may never have children, I may never find my dream job, and to think about, the ways in which that causes health issues today for a person, stress issues, lack of sleep, you name it. There's all kinds of negative outcomes about being able to think about the future. I never thought about that before.
It's true. And most anxiety, anything that's under this big umbrella of anxiety, is mostly about concerns for the future, right? Like, like, am I dying right now because my heart is racing? Am I having a heart attack? Or what's going to happen to my daughter when after I die? Or like, it's most anxiety is about future thinking. So in that sense, thinking about the future produces, it's also the reason that we have all the things we just discussed that were awesome, like healthcare, the ability to live longer, all these creature comforts in the internet. It's resulting from that capacity. But it also produces a lot of anxiety throughout the day.
Are you able, if you understand this from an intellectual level, you write about this, are you able to better cope with it than the average person because you've given it so much attention? Or do you suffer from all those, potential scenarios as much as anybody else?
I don't think I'm any better about it at all. I may be worse off because, I can compartmentalize. I'll explain exactly how anxiety works based on future thinking, and I can write a book about it. But that doesn't mean I'm not suffering from it. It means I understand why it's there. In the same way, like a cardiologist can explain how, eating the wrong foods leads to heart disease, but that doesn't help them not have heart disease in that moment because they've eaten the wrong foods. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I feel like no, you need to turn somewhere to someone else to help you get through those problems, who is not me. So I'm not helping myself.
When you look at the books that you've written, which one or which kind of component of any one of the books stands out the most to you in relationship to the way in which you feel most proud and how you've contributed to society and to the future of society? Like and all of it is great, of course, but what offerings within your books do you just go, God damn it, I'm so glad anyone who reads that is like better off because of it?
Well, I've got 3 weird examples. Well, it was supposed to be the dolphin book that I wrote was supposed to help everybody understand how dolphins think and what kind of animals they are in the world. And that would give us a better understanding of what it's like to be a dolphin and how we should interact with them. But I feel like, not a lot of people read that book. And if they did, they didn't take all that information on board. So because that's my area of expertise, I wanted to change the world's opinions on dolphins for the better. I'm not sure that worked. So that was a failure in one sense. But the things from the other books that people picked up on, I think the one idea that really struck people from the Nietzsche book was prognostic myopia, which is what I've been describing, which is this idea that we can think about the future, but our emotional response is not as strong about future events as it is for events here and now. It's not a new concept, but I framed it in such a way to explain why we're so bad at knowing how things are going to unfold, but still not being able to stop them. And there was a guy from Texas who wrote in to me, and he was asking if I could sign some books and send them to his law firm. And because he uses that book in his law cases. And I'm like, what's that now? Because I did not, it's not a book about law. Yeah. And he's like, I use this argument all the time from your book. I quote it in court when people are suing these big companies to show that like the companies knew what they were doing was wrong, but they couldn't stop themselves, but they did know better. And so he's like, they're suffering from this thing that you're talking about in your book. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like to think someone is like successfully sued a company because of my book. But the one unexpected thing that people keep talking to me about, and it was not part of my books at all as a main subject, was this little aside that I had in the Nietzsche book where I talk about aphantasia, which is the inability to visualize things. So some people can't, they close their eyes and they can't picture an apple or whatever. And so I have this, and I sort of was casually mentioning it. And a lot of people read the book and they'd never heard of it. And then they wrote me and they're like, oh my God, I have that. I had no idea that was a thing. And so like, of all the things I've written, that's the thing I think that's changed the most people's lives. And it was not what I intended at all.
It was just almost this feeling of like knowing that they're not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not
And not
weird.
even knowing they had the issue. Like they didn't realize that other people could imagine things, like picture them. They're like, I had no idea humans could do that.
Interesting. I must admit that I've always found that one to be so fascinating. This idea that if I were to say to you right now, picture an apple, you can't picture the apple. And I remember us speaking about this on the plane, and the one part that I just thought was even more startling, I thought, okay, well, surely you can picture your daughter's face. I'm like, picture your daughter's face. And like, you can't. No. And I was like, that is so fascinating. And then we started speaking about how there are individuals, like you'll have to remind me of the term, but people, for example, if they hear something, it comes up as a taste.
Oh, synesthesia.
Synesthesia, yeah. Right? Yeah, and then, or if they see something, it comes up as a smell for them.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, look, the brain is so mind-blowing on a million levels, and we're only just scratching the surface of what we know of it. Perhaps one day we might even be able to mentally tap into those ways in which we can experience things. We just don't know how to get there as of yet. When you think about what it is that you now understand from the research you've done, what excites you the most about the future, and what concerns you these days?
Well, what concerns me is definitely AI, because at South by Southwest, everything was about AI.
Yeah.
And I talked a lot. I had a little presentation there where I was talking about the dangers of parasocial relationships with AI and the ways that these relationships we have with large language models could be dangerous for us as individuals and collectively as a society. So I say that as AI gets more sophisticated and as we start putting these large language models into humanoid robots that look very, very human-like, people are going to have a much harder time understanding what kind of entity an AI is, if you know what I mean. Like what ethical category to put it into. Does it deserve our moral concern? Does it have consciousness in a way that humans do that matters? And it's going to get really muddy and confused, I think, for a lot of people.
And quicker, I think, than people know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, that's the way in which they're coping, quite frankly, is to think, well, it's not for another 5 or 10 years.
It's not.
It's right now. And I saw this recently where there was, one of those big thought leaders in the world of AI, and he was on a panel on stage, and he was asked by the moderator, when you talk around, amongst the people that are all on the forefront of this, what are people saying? And he said, we kind of have this like little joke amongst us where we say we should probably just go tell people to go home and to read poetry and to just be with your families, because it's all about to change. So you might as well just do it now while you can. And it was a real doomsday feeling when I saw that. And when you talk about this, this muddy area, I was seeing this. Entrepreneur was saying that the big opportunity now, if you want to make money on places like Instagram and TikTok, is to start creating AI, and it's not even avatars, like AI characters who look as if they are a real human being, and give them the personalities and give them the subjects. So like you're a fashionista, you're talking about sports, you talk about environment, and these will not even be real people, but they will be social media influencers. And the way in which you make money is to have a roster of these people who are all underneath your portfolio. And I thought, oh my God, this is getting really scary.
Yeah, and I mean, that stuff already has existed where you've got social media influencers, which are AI gen. Going back when I wrote the last book, and that was years ago, and now they're way more sophisticated, and people have whole relationships with these AI-generated entities online. And you're right. I think it will remain a big deal online, but I think the weirdest part is it's going to head offline. I really think that's when things are going to get really strange, when you start having those AIs uploaded into a thing with a physical form. Some sort of robot or a dog, or even just like even a simple creature or a stuffed teddy bear or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's going to really ramp up the strength of that parasocial relationship because it has a physical form, and that's when things are going to get very strange, I think, especially legally as well as ethically.
Right. So yeah, you're right, isn't it? Like it's like, did I cheat on my wife because it was a robot?
100%. That's a good example. Like it's just an object, but it looks and talks so human like that you would feel betrayed Very much so.
Yes.
If your partner was having an affair with a robot, right?
Right,
That's
right.
a new problem.
Yeah, we're going to move into some to some really kind of big ethical questions we have to ask ourselves. Do you then? I mean, because I guess what we're talking about here on some level too is that an individual then essentially could get to the point where, I talk about this like living in New York City, for example. Anybody who lives in any city knows that you don't have to leave your neighborhood. Every single thing you need is there, right? I've got my grocery store, my bars, and education, you name it, which is an unfortunate thing because it used to be nice where I had to go across the city to get just a block of cheese. And the way that expanded my experience of planet Earth. Well, do you worry that we're now going to become so insular, which is like, I don't even have to leave my apartment because, of course, everything can be delivered to my place. I can have all my friends here because they're all a bunch of robots. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's already happening with our discussion around kids, right? Kids are spending too much time on social media or they're locked behind their video games all day long. So that's already an issue in that sense. Obviously, it will be exacerbated if you can have AI friends that are surrounding you or whatever. But I think the drive that humans have to, like that AI tech was saying, like to go read some poetry and go do stuff in person, that's not going to go anywhere, and that's going to be hard to replace in a virtual environment.
Right.
So people are still going to want to go see a show. In fact, like live events are becoming more popular now in response to all of this online AI stuff. So I think that will continue to grow. This offline meet space in real life response that humans are going to have. So I think that's I'm happy with that. I'm more weirded out by if you could populate your apartment with 5 or 6 physical AI robots that really do replace your need to go to hang around with actual humans. That would. Yeah.
Well, we always say the same thing too, don't we? We're always with the newest form of technology that it's going to revolutionize our lives and give us the time to spend time with each other. So the argument is, oh, the robot's going to do my laundry, it's going to clean my apartment. What will I do with that time?
Never been true. I was listening to someone explain about this, like that was, the dream of the 40s and the 50s, like you get all these new appliances and suddenly like, all of the cooking and cleaning will be taken care of and you'll have all this time for recreation. Like this has never been accurate. Humans work all the time, no matter what is happening, and our lives are overfilled with stuff. All of this technological innovation has not given humans on average more free time. And it's certainly not going to be true in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if we have any kind of benchmark, we have there's enough of them in the history. The internet was supposed to make us so connected to each other, and we've never been so disconnected. Okay, and then what are you excited about? What's on the flip side of all this?
On the flip side, I do like that as we continue to investigate how animals think. Every few months, you'll find some new discovery of like, oh my gosh, animals can do that? I had no idea. That's amazing. And that has been going on for decades. And so as we go into the future, we're going to find that more and more species are doing fantastically complicated things in ways that we never thought possible, especially insects or creatures we never really thought about having complex inner lives that we never suspected. And so I think the circle, that the moral circle is going to grow as we take more and more animals in as being worthy creatures that we should be concerned about based on the kinds of complex cognition that they show. Because that has been true for the past 100 years, is that circle is growing and more animals are seen as more worthy and intelligent. So that I'm looking forward to. These discoveries that I don't even know in what realm yet or what kinds of discoveries, and that's exciting.
Right. I was, I think, mentioning it to you that I had seen recently how scientists had been able to map the brain of a fruit fly and then put it into a computer simulation, which is so mind-blowing, especially when you think about the size of a fruit fly, and then to put that mind into scenarios that a fruit fly would face, and that the mind, alarming number of times, like 80% of the times, responded to the stimuli. Like, let's say, for example, something sweet was put out. The brain knew to go for that. So they had created that kind of accuracy. And when I think about that, do you have any thoughts or hope that we might find ourselves in a situation one day where technology will allow us to actually communicate with animals?
Oh yes, that's you've hit upon my pet subject. I was at South by Southwest, and there was a speaker there talking about the AI that they're using to translate animal communication and animal language, and that's my pet subject. You see, because I very strongly believe that no, that is not going to happen.
Oh,
Because I studied the evolution of language in humans, and I'm very interested in animal communication and how it works and how animals think and how they need to communicate. And my sort of pet argument, which everybody always hates, is that I do not think that animals have a capacity for abstract thought, which can be translated to abstract symbol usage, because they don't need that and they never have. Humans
right.
can do that very well. That's one of the things that makes language language. And our behavior is obviously tied to that. But if you look at how animals behave in the world, it's clear that they don't need that. All of their behavior can be explained without the existence of a complex language. And
Right.
so this idea that AI is going to come in and find a magic language that we haven't been able to figure out, I think I find that to be overly ambitious. I think let's just say that
Hoping for something that doesn't exist.
delusional. Yeah, and I think it has to do with a misunderstanding of the nature of animal thinking and animal communication. But there are some people, most I'd say, especially in the AI tech industry, are very hopeful that they can design some system that's going to translate animal language into these complex ideas. And I just think that they're wrong. I would love to be proven incorrect, but every bit of evidence I've seen, and there's really not much published on this, is that no, everything I'm saying is correct.
Have you given, while you were speaking, you gave me an idea, and at the risk of sounding foolish or lacking any type of intellect in this particular topic, is it possible that you are right, that they don't have this complex language system that we just haven't been able to tap into? However, technology allows us to give animals an opportunity to expand their language such that in, let's say, 10,000 years from now, a dog, through those interactions and through evolution, now speaks. Like I think about, we talk about, call it the Neanderthals, and we're talking about way, way back when there really wasn't a complex language. It was a lot of grunting and body language, and I'm talking like at the very, very beginning. But through time, human beings developed a much more sophisticated language. Could animals do the same thing if we offer some sort of technology to help them get there?
Well, that's an interesting question. I've never heard it before, and I quite like it. But the key component you said is 10,000 years in the future. So let's say you started using a system, because we've already spent the last 100 or 50 years giving animals symbol systems to use. We do that with chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas. We did it with dolphins. We do it with dogs and their little buttons. And for the most part, they can say a couple interesting things, but they don't use it in any way that looks like actual human language. They're not really producing complicated abstract thoughts. But let's say you had an AI system, and then you took a dog, and then you started selectively breeding dogs that were better at using aspects of this. Over the course of 10,000 years, could you breed a kind of dog that could engage in abstract thinking and symbolic thought? I think that is more likely and possible, simply because it happened to humans, right? Something happened with our primate ancestors to create this capacity for abstract thought. And it's not unreasonable to think that another animal, especially a social species that wants to communicate, could be able to learn that. So that's an interesting scenario that we will never know the answer to, because we'll be long dead before 10,000 years. But
well, I believe in reincarnation. I'm going to come back and see it many times over.
Well, if I'm also reincarnated, look me up and let's have this conversation on a 10,000 year in the future podcast. I'm sure podcasting will survive 10,000 years. I know that.
Oh, yeah. No, there'll be no different technology in that time.
It's a good question, though.
Oh, thank you. Before I let you go, though, there's one thing I want to make sure that we get into this conversation, because I do think that what you do in the world of improv is really interesting in the way that you try to help organizations and leaders and refugees and I would imagine school students and your own classes everywhere to become different versions of themselves, or to see the world through a new lens. Can I give me a 30,000-foot view of what you think a person, an average person, if you will, who doesn't do improv, can how they can benefit from the lessons of improv?
Yeah, there are a few things that apply to everybody everywhere, whether it's your day-to-day social family life or your business, and they are the building blocks of improv, which are the yes and idea, which means to be receptive to new ideas and to build on them. Strangely enough, new improvisers are quick to shut down new ideas If I come in and start a scene with you and I say, hey, let's go to the ice cream store, and you'd be like, that's not an ice cream store. Like
Right.
you
I killed it.
yeah, it happens all the time in improv, and it's very normal, but it's also normal in our lives, right? If I come at you with some radical new idea, you're going to try and find ways to shut that down, and I have to really fight to prove myself correct, just like this conversation we've been having. And so improv teaches you to be more accepting of new ideas, and that makes you a better innovator, a nicer person, more fun to be around, better able to navigate social relationships. So that is a really strong basis. And if you can change your personality by being more of a yes and person, that's great. The learning to fail thing is something we talk about. People who are immune to failure are going to be more successful. And improv is all about getting up and failing. Because you do something and it's not funny and nobody likes it. That's most improv. If you've seen improv, it's usually not funny as often as it is funny, right?
Right.
And so you get used to getting up, trying something, and having it fail. And that's very, very powerful. Also, the concept of listening. To make a scene, you have to not just hear the person, but really stop your own thinking to listen to their thoughts before you can build on it. And this kind of active listening is key in any industry, for example. So those are some of the main ones for sure. And so as you practice the art of improv, those become ingrained in your personality. And part of what my presentations are, they have changed my life because I'm better at all those things now, and I do it, and it has made me more successful in everything I've done.
I can pick up on it with you. And again, when we first met, it's that you do have an openness to anything, essentially. Like I've never thought about that before, and even if it's confronting, that might be one of those things. Like, okay, I'll try that on. At one point, we started speaking about spirituality and mediumship, and this idea that consciousness doesn't die and it continues, and that we can communicate with essentially dead people. And I got the sense from you that this is not something that you normally gravitate to, but you were so open to the idea of it. Okay, let's give me your thoughts about that. And I just think that is such a wonderful trait that still to this day, sadly, so few people have. But just being like, okay, like I like to try to go into as many situations as I possibly can, especially big topics like religion and politics, you name it, with the idea that I'm more likely wrong than I am right, because these subjects are so complicated that I can only ever have such a small amount of knowledge on it. So tell me what you think, and I think it's an unfortunate thing that people don't do.
No, it's an improv thing for sure, but also scientists, in a way, you think of scientists as sort of closed off. But the whole point of science is that you accept that you don't know anything. You have a hypothesis, maybe even a theory as to what's going on. But if new information comes in, you take it on board and you change your ideas. Scientists love being proven wrong. And so that's part of that, I find as well. But the improv thing of just truly listening to someone, like you might not agree with them, but just hear them out, because you will understand them better, and you might actually change your own mind. And so I don't understand a world in which we are just sort of closed off and like, I believe what I believe and I don't care what you have to say. So like, I might not think that I agree with anything you're saying, but again, I'm looking for a nugget that might change my mind. Either way, I just wanted to know more about you and hear what you have to say. That's how people should talk to each other.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's this idea, and it's funny because we look at each other as if, we're different colors of skin, different religions, different, socioeconomic backgrounds, whatever the category might be, and we have this like such an other than perspective. And when I think about that, there's a few things that come to mind. Number one, genetically, we are 99.9999% the same as every other human being. I believe they say that the only real kind of difference between two human beings, regardless of what their skin color is or background might be, is it's as simple as even just your eye color. Like it's so non-important. We are basically the exact same thing, and we look at a person of like, just using the easiest example of a different color skin. We're like, we're so different. Like physically, we're the exact same thing, which people don't really like to hear, because you're also physically the exact same thing as a lot of people you don't like, right? Which is never convenient. But they did this study, I think, one time, about 250,000 people, one of the biggest studies that was ever done in the world, asking people about what you really care about, what matters to you the most. And they discovered that on average, the things that matter to people the most, regardless of where they live, regardless of their religious backgrounds, you name it, that on average 94% of the things that people care about are the exact same.
Yeah.
And we focus so much on
the differences,
on that 6%. When you do improv with corporate environments, and especially those who are more on the conservative side,
Yeah.
do they? How is the buy-in on that? I'm leading this somewhere because
Sure.
I something I just noticed last week. For me, at least, and I'll just might as well say it now, is the number of times when I work with my corporate audience, how much reluctance there is to just let loose.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I do this thing where I get one side of the audience to give the other side of the audience a standing ovation at the beginning of every one of my keynotes, right? I'm like,
cool.
why are you guys giving me a round of applause? You guys deserve a round of applause as much as I do. And the fear that is immediately instilled on something as simple as you are just going to stand up, you are just going to clap.
Yeah.
That is it. And you can see the discomfort in the eyes of these people. You're going way further and you're saying, cluck like a chicken in front of your colleagues. Like,
Yeah.
how does that go?
I find the buy-in is never a problem.
Okay.
I have done it with so many different kinds of groups, including corporate people, like people who've been working in an office environment and they've never engaged in anything remotely social along these lines.
Right.
It's almost as if they're itching to do it. Like you're giving them for the first time permission to do things. And as soon as someone models that behavior, they are all in because they want to do it as well. It's very, very rare to the point of I can't even think of an example where someone has been in one of these groups and they're just going to sit it out. They're just
Right.
going to watch from the sidelines. Everybody does it. And it may be, related. You're dealing with a very large group, although I've done large group improv as well. And it's certain tricks you can get everybody involved and they love it. But it's easier with a smaller group, like 10 to 30 people, to get the buy-in. But there's something about it, and partly, I can come in and I do improv sometimes with another data scientist, PhD friend of mine, and like we're scientists, right? Like we're respected scientists. We've got PhDs. You can call me doctor or whatever. And then you see us clucking like a chicken, and you're like, oh my. Like if those people who are serious people are doing that, I can totally do this. So that
Right.
also helps break down the barrier as well.
It really, and I think you've just raised like such an important point about the importance of going first.
Yeah.
And this is something I talk about a lot, where, I was recently speaking to an audience about this time where I came to this waterfall in a jungle in Thailand, and it was spilling into this great big pool of water, and there were about 200 people all standing on the rocks looking into this water, and it was about 35 degrees that day, just blistering hot, and everyone's thinking the same thing. I'm like, oh, we would all just love to jump into that water.
Yeah.
And of course no one does, because that would be considered taboo. And I turned to my guide and I said, can I swim in that? Can I jump in that? And she's like, yeah, you go for it. And like, I wasn't really quite sure if this was her way of like getting me arrested. And so I was like, you know what, screw it. You only live once. So I take the shirt off, socks and shoes off, and I jump in. And within about 5 minutes after jumping in, there were about 30 to 40 people in the water.
Yeah.
And you just need somebody to go first, and everyone else will do the things that they want to do.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of that. I would always go first, right? I will do the crazy thing first, and then people will follow. The ability to get people to do stuff by doing that it's really strong. But the caveat being, people probably already knew you and respected you before you did that. If you'd been some like completely insane person, like talking a load of nonsense, and then you jumped in, nobody would follow you. So
Right.
you have to have a level of respect first, and then you do the thing, and then everyone follows you. So
Right.
so it's about the setup as much as it's about the activity.
Yes. It's interesting because it's a great example for people who are leaders in business, who quite often they'll say, these are things that we need to do more of. We need to communicate better. We need to be vulnerable. We need to build relationships. We should go out for lunch with each other more often. And then they don't even display the behavior themselves, and they wonder why no one else is doing it.
That's exactly it. You have to be the example, be doing the thing.
This is it.
And again, the permission, when you give somebody the permission to do improv, really funny, silly, zany stuff, people are itching to do it. We all have that little inner kid in us that wants to play. And it's so, again, I find the buy-in no problem because of all the things we've been talking about.
I notice this with my children when they are wacky and crazy because they're still at the age where they don't realize that there's going to be a time when people make fun of them for being wacky and crazy. And I find that like one of my biggest jobs as a dad is to get them to be ready for those moments and to not care and to never let that stifle you. I was always a wacky like speaker, and when you're in high school, or sorry, when you're in elementary school, you got to get up and you got to do a speech in front of the class. Everyone does it, and most kids are terrified, and I always loved it. And I remember I would win every time, and then I'd go down to the gym, and then I'd win in front of the school, and then I'd go down to like the local Rotary Club, and then I would win there because I just loved it. And then one year, I don't know what happened, I turned 12 years old, grade 7, and I just became too cool for school. And I remember getting up in front of the class, and you could tell everyone was super excited. Oh, here goes Stuart. And I did this boring cue card story about the history of sports. And I remember being so devastated and so angry with myself for letting everyone down and for not being true to myself, because I was just afraid of being goofy and of being judged. And so, and that was it. I never went back. The following year, I went back to the old me, and have never looked back since then, just because of that feeling.
That's good wisdom. Well, I'll have to say the groups that are the best and the worst at improv, the best are medical students because they are down to please. They'll do whatever you tell them. Elementary school kids because they are in that zone already, just like you talked about. Dementia and Alzheimer's patients. Alzheimer's patients, that's a hard word to say, because they are missing the part that inhibits them from doing stuff. So they are very keen to say the craziest things. They are really good improvisers.
No way.
The worst group is pubescent kids who are in that like 13 to 17 age group, because that's when for the first time you're aware that the world is judging you, and it just cripples them from acting zany. So they are terrible. Like that they just won't do the thing, or if they do it, they phone it in to try and joke like, see how stupid this is, look at this. And I'm like, those are so like, I no thank you to like, you'll get a few like theater kids who are into it, right? But if you're just called to do improv for a class of like 14-year-olds, no thank you.
That is funny. That makes complete sense. It almost feels like the government should intercede and make this mandatory for every person between the ages of 13 and 17. Like it's required learning so that you don't go into that, because I believe that the problem is that when you come to the other side, you end up, it's hard to go back to your old self if for the last 4 years you've been self-conscious that entire time. Listen, I could talk to you for hours, and this has been really fascinating, and I've got another 10,000 questions I'm going to have to ask you in a future podcast. But as of right now, based on where you are in the world, what you're thinking about, what is it that you really want to get people waking up to as your parting words of wisdom?
My parting words of wisdom.
Yes.
That's really difficult. I would say that the key to leading a happy life is comedy. I think if you can laugh, however that happens in your life, whether or not it's going to a comedy show or doing improv or just watching a television show that's funny, I think of nothing more empowering and healing and just good for your soul than laughter. So make laughter, however you can get it, part of your daily routine.
That is such great advice. And I think that the way you just said it is so important, is in the sense that don't just hope for it. Schedule it. Schedule it.
Exactly. Yes. Because people do not. Oh my gosh. People in our demographic are craving to laugh. But in our daily routine, there's nothing funny happening. You have to make time for it.
Yeah. My daughter came home from school a couple of days ago and just thought the funniest thing, to the point where she was like belly laughter, was just her friend sticking his nose between his two hands and just making a funny face. And I was trying to get into it. I felt guilty. I was like, I couldn't quite see the joke. And she's like, we were just slapping our knees. It was the funniest thing, Daddy. And I'm like, okay, you know what? It reminded me that there are periods of our lives where we used to laugh our asses off daily. And, now there are moments where people go weeks and they don't even laugh.
It's the greatest tragedy. We need to be more like that, laughing at your friends doing something stupid like that. It is the best thing you can do for your health and your soul.
This is it. Yeah, my brother one time used to do work in Kenya with people living in the poorest places, and I said, what's one of your biggest takeaways from that time? And he said, I walk through villages in Kenya where most of the people don't even have enough money to buy a pair of shoes. He goes, but I guarantee you they laugh more in one day than most people in the West do in an entire month.
Amazing.
I thought that was so cool.
Yeah.
Listen, we're going to make sure that all of you who are listening and those of you who are watching, we're going to have all of Justin's links to his books, to his speaking engagements, to his podcasts. I mean, there's nothing this guy doesn't do. We're gonna get every one of you a free, 8-track tape of all of his music. This is gonna take us a while. We're gonna be in the recording studio for the next 16
That's
years.
right.
We're gonna get it to you, folks.
8 tracks only, though.
Only 8 tracks. Yeah, you have to have a station wagon in order to order one.
That's right. With full wood paneling.
That's right. Thank you so much for being on the show, Justin. I really appreciate it. You're doing a lot of great stuff for the world, and I wish you the best, and I hope you keep on doing it.
Thanks, Stuart. It's really fun to be on.
Yeah. All right. We'll speak to you guys soon. Kate, make sure you stay focused on what we're bringing to you on the airwaves. In the very near future, we'll have all kinds of other guests that are hopefully just as interesting as Justin on another episode of You Gotta Meet.